bringing him up?
So I would say,
I think he only has 3 rules.
if we discover that it is, like, I guess nomologically possible that a live thing, like a living being, some kind of animal, is able to die for 3 days and then come back, regardless of if they're an alien or not, I think that would do significant damage to the argument in favor of Christianity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fish?
But we're talking like dead here. We're not talking like passing out. Because I think the Romans were able to tell if someone was actually dead or not. I don't think that they just like was stupid and thought that Jesus was dead when he wasn't.
I don't think that either.
I'm not talking.
Maybe he was frozen.
I'm not talking like a Romeo situation where he takes the sleep for a day potion or whatever.
Yo, that story helped me out. If it wasn't for Romeo and Juliet, I would have totally, overreacted when my ex offed herself. But I was pretty chill with it.
Out of pocket.
This is like, it's almost like saying if a supernatural entity was found, it would make
atheism more likely.
It would make atheism less likely.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I phrased it very specifically. I said if it turns out to be like, I think nomological is the right scope here, but if it's like nomologically possible for a like sentient living creature to be actually dead for 3 days and then come back, if that were possible, I think the argument in favor of Christianity is bad.
Wait, but like kind of aren't you committed to saying, since Jesus was fully man, that
truly man,
whatever, like isn't him coming back to life nomologically possible? Right? Like, wouldn't you just be committed to saying that?
I guess I'm gonna fuck up the scopes here. I'm not good at like.
It's all good.
Yeah,
you're not on trial.
I guess what I'm saying is like, yeah. I guess what I'm saying is it must be in some way possible, but so improbable that it has to have been like if you imagine when a human dies, one of the first things, like your brain swells when you stop having oxygen, your brain swells, and that damage can't be reversed. Like, I guess that would be like logically possible. It's logically impossible for that damage to be reversed. So if we come across some kind of creature that can withstand the process of death without the cells dying, I don't know. You get what I'm saying, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I get like the kind of idea you're getting at, but like I just feel like it would be less miraculous if Jesus did the nomologically impossible, because he did. Like it's some metaphysical miracle or some logical miracle that happened or something. Like presumably you don't want to say that, or I don't even know if Christians believe that Jesus walked on water. Do you believe that that's literal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The Catholic Church says it's literal. I'm not extremely committed to it, but I will say tacitly that it is like literal. Well,
surely you want to say that kind of like Jesus was doing something that he was like, he wasn't doing something that was logically impossible, right? You want to say that he was doing something, he was like changing the gnomic laws or defying the gnomic laws, but he wasn't doing something nomologically impossible, because that would be a descriptive claim of him lacking the ability to do things in accordance with the gnomic laws. So it would just be the case that Jesus could not walk on water if it was nomologically impossible. So you want to say that he's doing something nomically possible. Or Cage, am I way off here? Because I've never thought about this before.
I would relate it to, how you can like theoretically. I'm thinking on my feet here, so
yeah, me too.
But you can theoretically slam your hand against a wall and the atoms line up perfectly and your hand goes through the wall. That's possible. If someone did that, it would be like shocking if someone did that for like 20 seconds. They keep doing it for the period of 20 seconds. I would start asking serious questions about how this was
If
possible.
they even did it once, I'd be like, okay, this guy, there's something special about this guy.
Yeah, the level of mastery.
Well, but
There's that funny
wouldn't that be
question.
like, so you're saying like, maybe it's nomologically possible for things to rise from the dead, but it's so rare that Jesus being the one that did it historically makes it likely that his other, highly hyperbolic claims were true as well, like he's God.
Yeah.
How long was Lazarus dead?
That's what I'm saying. I was about to bring that up. It was
that's a
a
good
trap. Pigeon, it was a trap.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly a trap,
Lazarus
right? Because
didn't
we
raise
agree that God.
himself.
Yeah, we agree that Lazarus raved by the power of God.
Logically possible.
Well, presumably you don't want to say Jesus raised himself.
He sure
Yeah, you
did.
do.
Well, what do you mean, how is he dead?
Because he's God.
Right. But you want to say the Father raised Jesus from the dead.
Let's nail down this Lazarus thing.
That's also not negating Jesus's doing it.
I'm not saying, what do you mean?
Wait, that
So-
would negate Jesus.
That
doing
would
it.
negate Jesus
No,
doing
it
it.
would not, because the three persons are one God, and God raised God.
Yeah, right, but the Father is
But
different from the
if
Son.
That's not look, if you want to say God raised Jesus, that's fine. You can't say Jesus raised Jesus.
Yeah, you can, because Jesus is God.
What we would say is that we would say that one person of the Trinity can't act alone, because when the Trinity acts, it acts as all three persons.
That's why I said it's
They're like
okay
they share
to say
a will.
that God raised Jesus. I'm so iffy on if you'd be saying God there, meaning all three persons raised Jesus. 'Cause
Well,
you'd
then
be
wait,
saying-
how is it a miracle that Jesus rose from the dead then? I don't understand.
Wait, are you serious?
No.
So it's
Wait.
like,
Maybe this is
wait.
it. Wait. Let me just think through this, because maybe I just said something really dumb. But this is my thought process behind why it's striking me at the moment. If you're just saying that's like, Jesus, who can do anything, was in human form, then died, and then he's Jesus. Let's just say in heaven, and he resurrects
hell.
himself, right? Like, why is
He was in hell, bro.
huh?
He was in hell.
Oh, whatever.
Not heaven, he was in hell.
raised himself from the dead in
Jesus
hell.
died and went to hell?
Yeah.
Fucking duh! To set the captives free. He defeated death and took the keys.
Okay, don't
right
spit
here, maybe-
riddles
maybe-
at me,
maybe
okay?
Maybe I can clarify this just a little bit. The thing is, it's not a
luck.
miracle. I'm not saying that the fact that Jesus raised from the dead proves that Jesus is God. Like, it's not something special about Jesus that made him raised from the dead. What we're saying is, if somebody dies and is dead for 3 days and then is raised, that is clearly, to us, an act of God.
Okay,
In the
then-
same way, when Jesus walked on water, Peter also walked on water with him. That doesn't mean that Peter is God. It just means they were both using, like, divine power to do such a thing.
Then here's a question, and I know that it's kind of like irrelevant, but why did Jesus have to... Obviously, Jesus knows what the suffering of the world is like. Why would Jesus have to take on human form to know the suffering of the world? And
Not to know it, to redeem it.
yeah, okay, but why couldn't, if the miracle is that something biological remains dead for 72 hours and then raised from the dead, why couldn't God have just made Craig raised from the dead? And then after Craig raised from the dead, he goes, guys, you'll never believe where I was for the past 3 days. I was meeting Jesus, and he's the
Craig
Messiah.
Isn't divine.
Huh?
Because Craig isn't divine. He's a created being.
Oh,
Seems
Jesus!
like
Wait,
it.
Jesus can
This
only
seems like a textbook
Jesus can only
justice.
resurrect divine people.
Hang on.
No, the redemption is bound to the divinity partaking in our humanity.
I know I'm asking like
How
super.
is this not a just so story?
I know I'm asking like
Like-
super low tier questions here, but I've never these thoughts have never entered my brain.
low
I'm
tier.
just itching.
It's not low tier, and it's a good question. What I
I'm
will
not
say
speaking
is
out.
that-
This is not why. Like Zach asked a relatively okay question. Why couldn't it be this way? Sommer says, "Oh, because it just so happens to be this way." What?
No, it's not me making it up. This predates Christ. All of these things
That's
were
not what
told
happened.
before Christ was coming.
No, no, no.
What
I'm
I will
asking
say-
your answer is just what happened, right?
What I will say is we're not saying that Jesus was the only way for God to communicate with humanity, because we believe prophets came before Jesus, right? Like there was Moses and a whole bunch of others, Isaiah, whole long list of prophets whose job it was to relay divine information and then prove that the divine information was divine by some kind of miracle. Moses split the Red Sea, etc. What the difference with Jesus is, the reason that the incarnation, God taking on flesh, was important is we have like complicated theology that says the way to reconcile human nature to God is for God to take on that human nature and then take a punishment in that human nature.
But okay,
So the thing isn't,
wait.
Jesus didn't have to be God to convey a message to us.
Right.
The only reason that the incarnation happened is about the reconciliation
But it's kind of like
of the human nature.
it's kind of like there's a Mary's Room situation going on here, and it was brought up as a meme earlier, but presumably Jesus
Yes.
doesn't learn anything new when he is incarnated as human.
Well, not in the sense of like divine knowledge, but in the sense of like when you're a baby, your brain only has a certain capacity, and then you grow and you're a toddler, you're growing in
But
like
presumably God knew what
This
that
is
felt
all
like.
gibberish to me. I don't get it.
as a human.
But did God know what that felt like?
Yeah, he went through he experienced all of the things that we do in the flesh.
Before, did God know what that felt like before?
Yes.
Okay, so
But we didn't. But we wouldn't know that he knew that, like, without him proving it to us. And
Huh?
he chose to prove it to us.
Hang on. Have you heard of the book? I can't remember who wrote the book. I think it was Nagel wrote a book called "What It's Like to Be a Bat" or something like that.
Jesus Christ.
no, I've never
I
heard
can
of
know
that.
everything about.
It's a paper, it's not a book, but yeah, go
Okay,
on.
sorry. You don't have to.
Yeah, you know,
Hey,
Cage is
snarky little
very
brat.
upset right now. We're all.
I just keep asking questions. They just get blown right by, like they're entirely irrelevant. You know.
Yeah.
Well, you don't ask him with a
There's-
childlike sense of wonder like me.
It's
Okay?
like, man, if I'm getting answers to my questions, let me be pissed about it.
I know.
I'm
Every
not.
single question he
What?
asks is getting answered, and he's just so
The
mad.
exact thing I just finished fucking saying was that every time I ask a question, everybody breezes right by it, and somebody's dumbass goes and says the exact opposite of what I just
I
said.
do apologize. I'm not meaning to ignore your question, Cage.
He's not
I
subtweeting you,
just
bro.
miss it.
Just trust me.
Okay. What I will say, there's two things I want to say about God's knowledge. Well, three things. One is I'm not equipped to give you a full answer on this. Like, you would have to read Aquinas. He spilled a lot of ink about it. It's a very difficult topic. But also, Sommer is right in that part of the incarnation was for our benefit. So it's not just God having the experience of dying, but it's us, like, for our benefit. Kevin Carnahan made a good point about this. If you imagine you had an ant colony in a glass jar, and you wanted to make the ants aware of your existence, there's a lot of different, there's a lot of problems with that. Ants can't conceptualize me. There's too much information about me for an ant to
but
understand.
this is just not analogous.
In what way?
I could make the ants aware of me if I gave them the capacity to be aware of me and knowledge of me. Like,
Yeah, but awareness isn't what he was doing, right? It wasn't just
Yeah.
awareness of him.
But my point isn't that, like, the ants can't understand everything about me, and they are, like, limited by space and time in a way that I'm not. It's not exactly analogous because God is infinite and I'm not.
yeah.
But if I wanted to somehow make the ants, all they know is, like, this jar and the dirt. If I wanted to, like, approach them on their terms and tell them, hey, I'm this big guy out there, like, how would I go about doing
Avatar.
that? I would have to demonstrate to them directly and be like, you can't understand the entirety of me, but I'm going to come down to what an ant can understand, and I'm going to demonstrate certain things, tell you certain things that
so
an
you
ant
think?
can understand.
So I just want to get something clear. You think that if there was no story of Jesus, right, and there was just maybe, I don't know if this makes sense just bear with me. If there was just the gospel absent the story of Jesus, right? Like, you still had, like, the garden and Moses splitting the Red Sea. Maybe Moses was the one that split the loaves and fishes, the burning bush. Like, you just had this whole canon, but you didn't have God manifest as human to show us that he knows that how we suffer, and he came to cleanse that, or whatever Jesus did.
You misunderstood me.
Okay.
So my point was, if God wants to, it says it in one of Paul's letters, it says, there is no greater love than this, to lay down your life for another man. So if God wanted to, there's stuff, like, obviously I have to admit that the Jews knew who God was. Like, they knew that God existed and they knew certain attributes about God. But if I wanted to demonstrate to the ants how much I loved them, I would have to, like if I wanted to prove it to them, I would have to get on their level, to a level that they could comprehend, and do some kind of act that makes it clear to them that I do love them. And if it's correct that the greatest way to express love to someone is to die for them,
which is not,
which I happen to agree with that being
the greatest way to express love for someone is to die for them,
to lay down your life, to risk your life for them.
What? How?
It's like one of the only, like, entirely selfless ways to do it.
Okay. Clearly that's not the best way.
This is a bigger conversation.
So,
I think
this is a
we
bigger
do.
Can I ask something to help you understand
Yeah.
this?
Go. Yeah. Please.
Okay. So in, like, science class, as we're growing, like talking about, like, how things were before, things went from very barbaric to more civilized.
Okay.
So in the Bible, it's described as, like, this carnal nature, right? And so if you were really selfless, you would be able to overcome the things like fear of death. You'd be able to set that aside to save someone.
Yeah, but okay, so this is where I'm getting hung up. It seems to me that, let's say there was a non-believer in Moses' circles. They saw him split the Red Sea, and they go, "Oh shit, okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down now." Let's just say that happened without the story of Christ. I think it's not unfair to say that there could still be a Christian movement that is just as robust, right? Like, you would just be taught from people that you saw doing miraculous things, right? That God knows everything. And then you say, "Oh, was God ever human? Does he know what it's like to be human?" And they go, "Well, no, God was never a human, but, like, just think of what you're asking. He created us. Of course he knows what it's like to be like something that he created. Of course he knows, like, the what it's likeness of a person or something like that."
But he would also know that as a human, we would yearn for more than just that. Like, of course, we would want to experience it in person. We would want that relationship if that was the reality of who he is.
Say that again.
I don't know how to say it again.
No, please. Did you forget? Because I was trying to listen.
So when you say, of course it's that way, but you also have to consider that as humans, we yearn or need that, like, hard proof. We want to see it for ourselves. We want to experience it for ourselves.
Did you see it for yourself?
Yes, but not like, obviously I wasn't there in Bible times, but yes, I've had experiences.
I know that you had experiences. I'm just saying, like, Sommer didn't need to see Jesus resurrect to believe in Jesus.
No,
but the resurrection had to have happened for me to be
You think so? You think like splitting loaves and fishes to feed, like, let's just say a bajillion people, you wouldn't be like, maybe somebody's got some cheat codes going on there.
Well, maybe at first, but if, upon, examining it further and really questioning it seems like that's actually a very important thing that people witnessed.
Okay, so you're saying if at any point in your life,
to be able to have that message, huh?
if at any point in your life you became convinced that the tenacity of your faith is directly tied to your confidence in the resurrection.
It says that in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but
Saint Paul
He
says
said, if the
Christ
resurrection
had not-
didn't happen, then we're worshiping in vain.
I think, though, and I know that this is a huge leap, but let's just say, to your satisfaction, the resurrection was proven false. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, that he was just in a deep meditative state for 3 days, but then after 40 days, we really couldn't find this guy ever again, and we looked all over. He was like,
Yeah.
we would have been looking for this guy, and we just couldn't find him. I think that you would still be a Christian, and that's just my thoughts.
So if the resurrection didn't happen, then I would not still be a Christian.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's hard to believe, though, right?
Why?
What you think about is the fact that like the resurrection had to have happened in order for Christianity to have existed in the first place.
How?
So if you don't,
How does that follow?
because okay, how do you have Christianity without the resurrection?
alive.
How do you have Christianity without Jesus' resurrection?
Yeah, you can have Jesus healing the blind, healing the sick, telling people to give their money to the poor.
No. How does it come to be that so many people attest to this event happening from various different places, and the message spread the way that it did without an event actually occurring to that standard?
Sure, yeah. Well, if you're asking me why I think people believe that the resurrection happened, even though I think that it didn't.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Okay, what are you asking?
I'm asking how you can conceive of a religion being created and split from another major religion without the resurrection.
Yeah, you could just believe that if you're just referencing, like, let's just say, like,
No, if the
Jews
event
or
didn't
Muslims.
actually occur, Zach, if the event did not actually occur, all of the things that proceed from that
Yeah.
event actually occurring would not exist.
Right, but I agree that maybe people wouldn't be preaching the same gospel, but that's just true because of the events in the gospel would be different. Look, if Jesus splits, Starburst and Twizzlers instead of ropes and what is it, loaves and fishes, right? It's not like Christianity would be gone away forever. You would just be telling the story with like.
Zach,
that makes no sense.
but that's not the same thing. You're still categorically talking about a man performing a miracle, which is reproducing enough food to satisfy the hunger of a population. So that, in simplicator, is the event. It doesn't matter if it's fucking wine and cheese. It doesn't matter if it's bread and fish. Simplicator is producing enough food to feed a population of people.
Okay.
No.
Wait,
So
I just have
now-
a question. I just got a question.
Super relevant.
He did all these miracles and he lived perfectly and he still got crucified even if he didn't resurrect. Like why would you not be Christian
Exactly.
without that part?
Yeah.
That doesn't make
Okay,
any
so
sense.
this is the part that I'm trying to explain.
So
Because the event of the resurrection in itself, people, you can have somebody perform every other miracle that has occurred in the Bible, not have the resurrection. And if you don't have the resurrection, which is the inciting event of people giving as much gravity to Jesus as they did, like there is no other thing that is talked about more than the resurrection
Look,
when it comes to.
you can say this about a couple of things, right? You could say this like, if Eve didn't eat of the apple,
That's
then we
not
wouldn't have
true either.
needed Jesus, right? Like Jesus' sacrifice wouldn't have been necessary.
I mean, yes.
Him
What
being,
did you-
him being born of a virgin,
Because Adam still ate. Okay.
him being born of a virgin,
Summer, that's a
and
bit
then
uncharitable.
living
Obviously, I'm saying if the fruit was
sinlessly.
never eaten.
Zach, if you wanted to propose if the fruit was never eaten, we wouldn't have Jesus come down and give himself up, so you wouldn't be a Christian. That follows because you
No,
don't have
I-
the sin
No.
or the need.
Wait, hang on. You have to define what you're talking about with Christianity here. Like, if Jesus wasn't crucified and didn't raise from the dead, we could still have some kind of like sect of Judaism, but it wouldn't be what people understand Christianity to be.
Yeah,
The idea of Christianity, like if you were to try to substantiate the gospel, it would be something like God died. God preached to those in Abraham's bosom. God rose from the dead to show His love for us and to prove who He is.
You guys are being recorded,
If you
by the way.
don't have the raising from the dead, you would just have some other religion that doesn't look like what Christianity looks like now.
I think it would look a lot
That makes sense.
like I think what Saint said is true. So let's
So I was going to go back to what Saint said.
let's say that when you're brought up, you go to these beautiful monolithic structures with beautiful ancient architecture inside and a deeply reverent atmosphere, and you get told by very very trustworthy people that claim to have a custodial possession of the literal facts all the way to antiquity, and they just tell you that this guy was born of a virgin and he lived a sinless life and he was persecuted for no reasons, and he fed he healed and then he was killed for no reason, and he professed that he was God and that he was here to show you that just like you, he knows the pain of death. And it's actually a deeper commitment because he's not even going to come back to life. He's going to fully die and then go to heaven where he belongs. I think that it would still be very much like Christianity.
But
Yeah, I
it
agree.
would
I don't
have
understand the
completely
importance
different-
of the resurrection.
It would have very different soteriology. Like, it would have very different
Sure.
theology on salvation.
Sure, but
Can you call something the same thing if a major event within it didn't occur? Like, would you call the Soviet Union if the October Revolution didn't occur?
well,
No.
it depends. So, like, for something like, I wouldn't call 9/11 9/11 if plane crashes didn't happen. Like, I
but
get
would
what
you
you're
call-
saying with something like that,
Would you
but
call the fight against terrorism if 9/11 didn't happen? No.
well, why? That
Call it
just seems
something
like you're
else.
straight up begging the question.
Okay, but you're doing the same thing because you're saying, well, why would we call it Christianity? Like, it should still be Christianity under the
No,
assumption
I'm
that
not
the
saying that we
resurrection-
would call it Christianity. That's not even what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah,
it would be like Christianity, a lot like it.
Yeah, so Christ as a human is worth following, and then there would probably be people who kept on the, whatever about him, the stories that occurred, right? I'd probably, as a regular person would probably just be like, oh, wow, that, like most people do, he's a good teacher, or,
Wait, hold
I
on.
don't-
Zach just said that he wouldn't call it Christianity. So then,
I've
what's the
never
point of
claimed
saying
that.
You just said that.
Yeah, a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet, dumbass.
yeah.
Okay,
so just
but a
the
rose is a rose.
I'm
Because
talking
of
about the
its
concept,
shiny
not the mouth noise. I don't care about the
Okay.
mouth noise.
But the concept of Christianity is found, look, the concept of Christianity is founded on Jesus' resurrection.
I understand
as the
that's your
concept of
opinion.
hold on, let me finish. As the concept of the war on terrorism
Yeah.
was founded on 9/11, as was the
Look,
schism between
sure.
Pakistan and India.
I get your point.
is-
You're looking at the pillars of Christianity and you're saying one of these foundational pillars is the resurrection of Jesus, such that if we removed this pillar, the whole thing would crumble. And I'm saying, I see all of these pillars and I'm wondering if this Jesus resurrection wall is load bearing, okay? I'm just wondering, right? And I'm saying,
and I'm explaining to you.
yeah, I get that it's your opinion. What would be different about it other than the guy didn't rise from the dead? Which is more sacrificial?
You can't say.
Which is
because
more
like,
which is more
just that-
sacrificial? A God dying and then coming back from the dead to show you that it's God, or a God, fully living the human experience and humans don't get to come back, and then you just have to have faith that the things that his fruits were good or something.
But you're just asking.
Oh, no
hypothetically
response?
speaking, if there was a possible world that existed in which Jesus' resurrection didn't happen, how would Christianity look? How can
that's what
Yeah,
I
it would
was
look
trying
very
to
much the
answer, Getty.
same.
It would be very similar,
Yeah.
except for, so, how people think that the Buddha was very, the Enlightenment and shit like that. We would have it in history as this, teacher who had impact. I think without the resurrection, the claim of him being God would not suffice for most people. who are actually Christian.
Yo, Whit. Oh, actually Christian. Okay. I didn't know we were talking about actual Christians here.
Yeah.
Yo, Whit, do you think that if Jesus never would have resurrected, that people still might follow the Christian religion or something that's very much like it?
There are people who still follow John the Baptist.
And if you want, Whit, I can even start a new recording. That way, you are even not even associated online with any kind of, partial endorsement.
Well, I mean, being that like Christianity, as we know it, is like rooted in the very person of Christ. I think anything pertaining him and what he has done, right? If none of those things happened, then he wouldn't be connected to the Abrahamic God. So I would say that it wouldn't be anything. Christianity wouldn't be, from my perspective.
I don't think. Okay, so maybe this is how we bridge the gap.
Okay.
If everything happened except for him walking on water, I think you would still say Jesus is God.
Well, I mean, I don't think that like the miracles themselves were meant to be like the showing of power and divinity. I think there's a lot of deeper theological meaning to them, but
at least to like a silly atheist, me making infinite food, look at me, I'm God. Me walking on water, look at me, I'm God.
Sure.
So, but I'm not trying to minimize those things. I'm just saying that.
No, I know.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. You can talk because I'm yapping.
It's okay. I like from our perspective, these things are. I'm gonna fuck up this word. Iconographic.
Iconographical.
Iconographic.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, you could just say iconic.
So, like, being that, like, somebody kicked him. Being that in the theology, it's understood that Christ is the new Adam, right? So, with Adam, death was brought into the world, right? Through our sin. We become subject to death. Christ, being the new Adam, defeats death. And he does that on the cross, and he does that with the resurrection.
Okay,
if he didn't do that, then he's
okay.
He's
this motif this reaches me. Okay, so you're saying the reason he had to raise from the dead, correct me any step of the way, is because kind of he had to like get payback or restore balance. Somebody, was made it so where humans are subject to death, and he had to make it so people knew that he was not subject
but
to
he
death.
defeats death.
Yeah.
So like on the cross, this is what he does, right? And had he not raised from the dead, right, then he would have been subject to death, which means he wouldn't have been God, which means our faith is nothing in that sense.
Well, I agree with all that stuff except for like if he didn't raise from the dead, then he wasn't God. I just.
Well, I mean, I was trying to think of maybe like an intuitive pump for you, but I just think like this idea of like I guess God being subject to death in this sense. Presumably, if we're going to invoke some kind of modality, you're probably not going to say there's any logical contradiction with that.
There's no logical contradiction with Jesus rising from the dead. That's right.
No, I mean like God dying.
Oh,
being subject to mortality.
Right, under a Trinitarian sense, no.
Sure, but like just under like our notion of God, I guess you could say in his divinity, if we're not invoking the hypostases here.
Oh, right. I'm kind of equivocating. So I'm sorry. I just realized I was like shoveling. To me, dying means to stop existing. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay. There's no.
So intuitively, it just seems like to me that like in his divinity, how we understand God, right? or at least some notion of God anyway, that like he wouldn't just, cease. I mean, if that's your understanding of death.
No. I'm saying that the reason that I was having trouble answering your question straightforwardly is because you said, is it logically impossible for God to stop existing? And I was like, okay, but you just mean like his soul separating from his body in the sense that, like,
well, yeah, I mean, death is going to be it's going to be understood very differently, but
yeah, I only brought that up to show that I'm going to stop equivocating now, and to answer your question, no, I don't think it's logically impossible. I think it's logically possible.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, right, is going to be understood through the Old Testament and in Christ fulfilling such things, right? He's the fulfillment, the new covenant, all that understanding. Had Christ not fulfilled those things, then he is not the Messiah, he is not the Son of God, he is not God, and therefore Christianity is, Yeah.
I mean, there's the question of, like, if he didn't fulfill those things, if it was just,
I don't think, sorry, go ahead.
If it was God's plan to show you, like, let's say that's, because there's kind of, this is not an insult, but there's kind of like, poetic language going on where Adam was subject to death because of, like, original sin, and then so God has to defeat death. But if the world were such that, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Let's just say that, original sin did everything else, but it just didn't carry with it this. Yeah, we were subject to death, but people didn't really take away. That wasn't the main takeaway. Now the main takeaway is that we can stray from God or something like that. Well, okay, then the kind of redemption story that Jesus would fulfill in that world would be that, oh, now we can stray further from God. Okay, I need to take human form, right, and show you how closely aligned I can be with God. I can show you how, I'm sinless, and then when I die, just like you guys will be close to God when you die, I remain dead and I'm close to God, and and I was only far away from God in a metaphorical sense because I was like splitting my nature between fully God and fully man, and now I'm fully God again. This is crazy low-tier verbiage, but in that version of events, it seems like there could be this figure that's just as revered as Christ is, and him staying dead would actually be like, there would be reverence to that, or it would be important. I don't know, like, because you could say this, you could say, well, God could have, woke up and tap danced after a day or two or 3 or 4 or 5, but he showed how dedicated he was to, embodying flesh and giving us the message one and only time, and just trusting that we're going to, do the thing and carry on his teachings and pass it down for generations or something like that. God, I feel like such a low tier, but go ahead.
I just think, intuitively, like, the incarnation and the deep theology behind that, like, this isn't going to be disconnected from the faith of Abraham, right? So, it's hard for me to manage a sort of like particularization of this and saying, well, look, if this didn't happen, how would have the world seen Jesus Christ, the figure?
Yeah.
At this point, it seems that, like, given, the understanding, the teaching as a whole, had Christ not done, incarnated, became man, died on the cross, resurrected, ascended, and transfigured, all those things that go along with it, and even just, right, the parts that we don't know, the ministry of the things that he did do, each thing that he did even in the smallest of measurements, was a redemption of humanity, which is our understanding of, the incarnation in and of itself in a very, broad sense. But I would just say that, given if those things were found to not be true, then Christianity isn't true. It's just
So you would
how I see it.
you would say that like your belief in Christianity is also directly tied to your confidence that the resurrection happened.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and I would say, yeah, I mean, the resurrection as a whole. I mean, I think some man, rising from the dead, right, dying, and then 3 days later coming back to life. I think in a vacuum, I wouldn't say that that means that God exists or that he's God. I think it's all the other things tied along with it. I'm not just, but I do think, had Christ remained dead in this sense, he wouldn't have been the Messiah.
Wait, but I think. Wait, but okay. So I just want to. Okay, you find out tomorrow Christ did not resurrect, and that's true. Are you a Christian still, or do you believe God is maybe you believe God? Are you a Christian still?
I don't know.
You said no, or you don't know?
I would probably say no.
Then it does seem like, because you said something there. You said,
well, if he didn't incarnate, if he didn't do all the other things that were attributed unto him, if every saint that I've ever heard of and listened to were just forgeries of men doing all these things, I think, that would also lend credence against Christianity being true.
You said that's it's not the my belief isn't tied to the resurrection. It's more of all these other things that support, that all the works that went along with it. But if you find out that the walking on water works, not, that's an unfortunate wordplay there. But let's say you find out some of the other works that aren't raising from the dead. You find out one of those is not true. Are you not Christian then?
I mean, I would say that would be a very big deal.
So if you find out that he didn't walk on water, or
what if you go to heaven and he's like, by the way, I never walked on water?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Well, let's say that everything is true. He split loaves and fishes. He rose from the dead, but he didn't walk on water. And they're saying he walked on water, and we just learned that this.
There's some way that this isn't true.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I'm taking these things as a whole, not a particular.
Well, then it would seem to me that it wouldn't. Oh, you're saying you're taking them as a whole, as in if any one of them is false, it's like very, very harsh.
Somehow you brought about some understanding to me that it's been. I mean, I don't take these things as at least the faith that I have is merely some kind of assent to some evidence.
Right.
And that's why I hold it to be true. But if we're to somehow find some way to say that Christ did not do X and that's attributed unto him through the faith, I think that would be pretty crumbling.
Oh, wow. Okay. I know it feels like I'm interviewing you, but I'll stop.
Okay.
Yeah. That's wow.
Yeah, it's a big claim.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you defend the others when one falls?
Well, I think history is full of examples of people defending the others when one falls, but I wouldn't, I'm not biblically literate enough to give you an example of when a church father said something, or when they transpose something into
Well, I think a lot of these things are I think when you get into, and maybe this might be a different approach, which is why I was saying to you, like Roman Catholicism and all that jazz earlier. The Eastern approach is much more mystical about this.
Yeah.
So, believing that said event happened, it's not to say it's without some foundation and evidence, being that even Christ existing as a person.
Of that, right?
Huh?
But you don't believe it because of that, right?
No, I mean, I would say it supports it, but I wouldn't say that's the foundation.
Actually, maybe for Eastern Orthodox, it makes sense that if one claim is bad, then all the claims might be bad, because it's like, okay, well, we claim to be like the bearers of the story, so if the people that have been telling us the story got something
well, it all hinges on like the person of Christ.
But you wouldn't go so far as to say, I don't know what to call, like, I'll just say the Bible, okay? But you wouldn't go so far as to say, let's say something in the Bible turns out to be not true, but it's not attributed to Jesus. You wouldn't say that would shake your faith, right? You could just...
I think, like, the understanding of the scripture and what it speaks to, I think nearly every page of the Bible, if not all of it, is speaking to the person of Christ.
Okay, then maybe I'm just saying, like, it was like silver, frankincense, and myrrh, okay? Maybe we just find the three wise men, and it was silver, it was not gold, and there's no way to mistake gold for silver at that time. Something silly, like, that wouldn't be like, oh, well, maybe this spoiled the rest of the facts. Maybe Jesus didn't walk on water. I don't...
Well...
Like, is it that serious?
Well, I think, like, when you kind of, read more into these things and become a part of it, like, even with, like, iconography, there isn't a detail in iconography down to, like, the color and what's portrayed and how they're portrayed that doesn't have some meaning to it, right? So even something like frankincense, gold, and myrrh, like, there's some symbology to it.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not gonna sit here and say, right, like, even with, like, the claims of, like, timing and dating of authorship, right? If we come to find out that Mark was written September 20th of whatever,
2005.
Yeah, 2005. I guess, that would probably be a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
But
No, but
what I'm saying is that, like, like, we're not about this, like, exacting part of it, but there is, every piece of scripture, every word in scripture, whether I don't hold that there aren't transcribal errors and things like that, because there are, but the meaning behind these things, every piece of it has a meaning to it, a symbology to it. And I think, once these things, if we just found out, right, that it wasn't
silver,
gold, and it wasn't still silver, I don't know what that would mean. I'm not going to sit here and say that,
right,
like, that would
but
be...
you were pretty confident that the others would shake your faith, but this one, it's like, I don't really know what I would say.
I don't know. I mean, I'd probably take some guidance as far as that goes, but...
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say that... I mean, even if, right, you bring out a bigger piece, I think if somehow you prove that Christ didn't incarnate, like, it'd be done and over. Yeah, cooked. Yeah.
Well,
I think the whole will be cooked.
What if it's like the temple curtain being like torn in two or whatever?
I don't know. I mean, look, you guys, bring it to me, and then we'll, I'll bring it before my priest, and we'll.
You're not proselytizing me. No way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, these things are, it's kind of difficult to convey. And I've learned this over 3 years of conversing. I just don't think like I'm going to do a very good job of trying to convey.
I think you're one of the best at it.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's not.
that.
I'm not being any kind of way. I'm honest. But
No,
I'm being serious.
I believe you.
No, Whit,
believe you're
I'm not lying. Whit.
I believe you. Oh, is she okay?
What just happened?
Yeah, spider just jumped off the cat tree onto Nora. Well, but also Getty said something. He said, how does one, how does one banana stay ripe if the whole bunch is rotten, or how does the bunch stay ripe if one banana is rotten, or something? Like, Whit, in EO, since you guys have the the Deuterocanon, or whatever, is there anything that the church has ever thought was kind of literal, and then later said, okay, maybe this is kind of more metaphorical?
I think as it pertains to like the growth and our understanding of it, if you're talking about like Israel in the Old Covenant is going to be typological of the church now, right? But before said revelation, right, they may have they went over these things, like who's the angel of the Lord, who's this, right? Like, it's claiming, the angel of the Lord's claiming to be Yahweh. It's like, this doesn't make any sense, right? And so they went over these things. So in that sense, I mean, I guess you could say that the church prior to Revelation, but like we, I take like being that the fathers, especially in the apostolic era, right? I don't think that the gospel in and of itself changed or evolved into something that it was different than. The church is living. It's full of living people, and as certain things unfold, the church meets its brings people into the fold, into this understanding. I think each father serves his kind of purpose in his time, right? God utilizes them in a participatory way, right? For its time. And so something like, I don't know, the hypostases, right? The two natures of Christ. It's not to say that, well, because the apostolic era didn't. Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
True. I'm just kidding.
That is true. But I think that, like,
imagine getting roasted by a 4-year-old.
I know. But I think during the apostolic era, it's not to say that, they believed in a different Christ because they didn't have this conversation about the two natures of Christ. I just think that, as we're met, right, being that we are, Christ reveals himself in this way, and then people are confronted with such understanding, and then they try to understand these things because that's what we do. We evolve in that knowledge. We grow in it. And
right.
So I just don't think it's different.
It makes sense that we might not get God's intentions right the first time because we're so limited, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Sir or somebody who said look, if
that guy's an idiot.
It's hard for me because from our perspective, right, St. Paul is alive, right, and he's not dead. So, but if we're meeting,
that's the first I've heard of that.
Alive in Christ, Floopy.
Oh, I thought you meant he's still around the world somewhere, just hiding.
He went to Cuba with Tupac.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that, if somebody came to him now and did the whole, when you say God, point to the, do you mean point, which one are you pointing to, right? That kind of stuff. You know, I don't think that like St. Paul would just be utterly tripped up by something, you know, in that sense. But I also don't think that like the way that a lot of us approach it is how the apostles and even the prophets of old, right, and the way that they're portrayed, understood and practiced the faith. Because for me, it's not some, even for Christianity and traditionally, it's not an intellectual assent. It's a living practice that you're a part of, and so I just don't think that that would be an issue.
Well,
I know what would trip up Paul.
Yeah,
We send deathless light back to the first century, and he can speak Koine Greek.
that's true.
yeah.
I just
That's
like
what
it. Just seems to me that if oh, go ahead, Seb. I'm yapping.
No, I was just gonna say Deathless would be an amazing person to send back in time.
I just think that, you know, anytime, let's just say sometime in history, we go, you know, Adam and Eve are real people. We are descendants of them. You know, God made them first. It says so, and that's the way it is. I don't know if that's sola scriptura or if sola scriptura can be metaphorical, but whatever. And then later they go, okay, well, this is kind of like a metaphor to tell the story of our sinful nature. And maybe this happened in some, like, you know, maybe God knew this would happen, or I don't know. But the garden isn't an actual place, or wasn't real in history, and it's a metaphor. Like, wouldn't that be an example of, like, I'm not saying God of the gaps here. I'm not saying that. It's kind of like what we were saying earlier, where if you found out something was different than it was recorded, it would whether it would shake your faith or not. Now, in this instance, you find out that, okay, there's nothing that's false that's going on. You didn't find out that something was false. You just found out that the kind of it wasn't a literal thing that was happening, and it was a metaphorical thing, and that was a misunderstanding on your part as a human, or the church's part as a translator, or whatever. But it's not like the gold where you find out it's, you know, silver, or the walking on water, but everything else is true, or the resurrection. This is like just you go from thinking events are literal to, okay, they're kind of hyperbolized for, you know, a good example of right and wrong or something. Isn't that just an example of people finding out something that goes against what they think is essential for Christianity, and then kind of adapting and it not shaking their faith, quote unquote?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, like, you know, even for first and second temple Jews, right, the meaning of scripture can have a both and not just an either or. So
Yeah,
you know, it can be,
that's a fortune cookie saying. Okay, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah, it is. But like,
You felt so good about getting that out. Okay,
I did,
keep going.
I felt really good. But I think that, like, you know, it can be describing an event that's happening in history, but also be typological and symbolical of things. So, like, it's pertinent to understand, I think, if you're gonna adopt maybe the Eastern approach to this, is that, like, the very truth of our faith is rooted in the person of Christ. And if the person of Christ, right, isn't the things that are understood and revealed, all of that would just absolutely crumble. I mean, it just would.
So
The faith would crumble.
So you're saying that if there was an understanding that something is literal, I know it can be both and, but let's just say that you found out that something was being taught as literal and then later was revised to be more hyperbolic or metaphorical. You're saying that would be like give you cause to be skeptical of the claims about Christ as well?
I mean, it would be probably shaking for me.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the preservation, you know, of the teaching, the witness of the church, the memory of the church, the life within it, all those things that, you know, I say are, I would at least be data points that raise the probability that
Right.
Christ is indeed God. Yeah, I mean, I think like if we were to find out that somehow Christ doesn't, you know, have two natures, or Christ is this and that, whatever, whatever declared so through the count, that would crumble the very foundation
That gives
we have.
me a lot of perspective, because sometimes I think EOs get an abrasive name tag, because they're like, you know, X isn't Christian, Y isn't Christian, and then, you know, there's some pushback, and they're like, oh, you know, like let's say Triple B, my boy John Geary, JG, he gets in tussles with EOs all the time. He goes, I'm Protestant, I'm Christian, so you don't need to fight with me. And they go, you're not Christian, bro. And he's like, what do you mean I'm not Christian? He goes, yeah, are Mormons Christians? And then John's like, well, no, but that's different. And then they go, oh yeah, it's different. But if you're saying that were you to find out any of this EO stuff was like, you know, off by, let's just say like, you know, by the amount signified by something going from literal to metaphorical, if that would shake your foundation of your belief, I can understand why you would be mad at people who, you know, participate in churches who it just seems like every century they're just revising and revising and revising, and like, oh, you know, this it's so scriptura, except for this passage where, you know, he doesn't really mean this. It's kind of more of like a, you know, a wives' tale or something like that, you know?
I mean, I think that it, like, I grew up, right, Protestant, everybody knows this, but it's like, had you guys asked me these questions prior to this, I'd have nothing for you. I really wouldn't. Like, I think that I probably would have been a Pizza Hut Cocoa person at this point.
And here's the kind of like,
Did you just say Pizza Hut Cocoa?
here's the kind of more like abrasive question though. You know, if somebody asked these questions when you're a Protestant and you couldn't give them anything, do you think that would have shaken your faith?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't think I came to this on my own, but I would say that given how I approached the things before, how I understood the things before, which I'm still very much lacking in, I would say that like there's a high probability I probably, or at least a higher probability that, you know, maybe I would have been turned away from it.
How long have you been in EO for?
Couple days.
Yeah, just a couple days.
Yeah. I just read
Pretty
all
much
the books
going
that
on. We're going on 7 years.
I'm inquiring EO. Inquiring EO just means pestering an EO with questions, right?
Yeah, it does. That's exactly what it means.
Okay, yeah. Then I'm
Have you
But
been
I
taking?
didn't do it.
Oh no, finish.
Yeah, I mean my journey in this is going to be very.
If you do that again, you're getting dropped, nasty ass.
Bro burped into the mic, bro.
I didn't know you guys could hear that. I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't even near my phone.
Yo, one time.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, that was specifically to fucking dope because she's got a gun to my head every time she says something.
Okay, bro.
But I do think, you know, I think if you would have asked me, like if I would have entered into the same spaces and you would have asked me these things, it may have like pushed me to try to understand, and maybe I would have had a different path towards EO, but I think it would have, you know, it would have been a much different. I don't know. Maybe it would have been a better track. I don't fucking know.
No, I'm
just
not. I'm
gonna
not saying.
I'm just gonna say I find it very interesting that all of these people said that the resurrection not being true would change their view or their opinion of Christianity so tremendously. Like, that's crazy to me.
I thought
Yeah.
that was shocking at first too. I still kind of think it's shocking, but
You know what I always found shocking is, I think it was one time, it was a couple years ago, I was in a live, and it was a mixture of different kinds of denominations. But they were all Christian, and I think like the subject of the live turned into like, if you were to go back into like biblical times, like what event would you want to like witness, right? Like what would you like want to see? And you know, I didn't answer, I think, until the very end, which, you know, I'm not really sure what my answer was, but their answers, which was very shocking to me, would be like, oh, I want to see Christ crucified. And I'm like, holy fuck, why? Holy
I want to see him fucking
Like,
resurrect, not
that's-
crucified. What the
That's a
fuck?
crazy answer, bro. Why would you want to see that? Like, I don't know. I think I'm not even, I'd be just like the apostles. I'd be out, bro. Like, I don't even think I would.
Americans are morbid as fuck.
You know?
That's why.
So I'm like, this kind of idea, like, you know,
I just thought of something so bad, bro.
I mean, I can see the importance of the incarnation and the crucifixion. I feel like that those are like two main. If those were taken away, Christianity would collapse. But the resurrection, like the Dormition, is dogma for us also. Like Mary resurrected 3 days later, and we don't consider her God. And that's the only reason I could think in my head, just at first glance, like why is the resurrection holding this much weight? But I guess if the saints were writing about it, like now looking back, we would have to question everything else that they wrote about it too.
that's why I said that, like,
makes sense.
these things are iconographic, right? So we see even in like the resurrection icon, which I think is why iconoclasm is just so fucking terrible. But besides the point, right? In the resurrection icon, we see Christ pulling Adam out of hell, right? And I think, like, in this sense, you know, being that like he's typological, like, you know, Adam is typological from that perspective. It's a circling back and coming back, right, into this understanding. And had Christ not done that through the incarnation and the resurrection, had he not resurrected, he's not the Messiah, he's not God, and that would crumble Christianity. It just would.
Mary didn't pull Adam out of hell.
Okay.
Well, Mary in the Dormition is a different subject. She was immediately brought
Yeah,
to
didn't she
heaven.
also like go straight to heaven?
Yeah,
She
I
didn't
mean,
do anything else. She just like went straight up.
we would say that, I mean, she's the greatest of all saints, but I would say that she immediately ascended to the, she's the closest to Christ, if that's what you
Yeah,
want to say.
Catholicism doesn't even hold to her having died and then resurrected. They just say that she went straight
Well,
up.
they don't, and
Catholics are
unfortunately
heretics.
wrong.
Yeah.
True.
Unfortunately wrong about that one.
You don't think a whole person can ascend to heaven?
Catholics are paid by big church.
I'm not saying that they don't. That's not the part that's in contention. They hold to Immaculate Conception. They hold to she never died, right? Like that's
and
something
papal
that they held.
supremacy. It's crazy.
Right? Their Mariology is quite different from ours.
Wait.
Well,
So Mary.
yeah, I know.
Wait. This is dumb. This is gonna be very dumb. Just brace yourself.
Okay.
So Mary's body is in heaven, or like what happened? Like.
According
Yeah,
to the
so-
Catholics, they believe that she is just straight up in heaven upstairs.
Imagine
Filling
being,
out.
bro. Everybody else has
she
got
got
like.
the glorified body.
Everybody else has got like
Her soul
wings
was
and
received
shit, and
by
you're
her
just
son.
stuck in your heavenly body. Oh my god. I'm just
Yeah, the
kidding.
Dormition has a lot of, like, I mean, it's one of the feasts it's one of the 12 great feasts of the church. But I don't think we make like such definitive claims, but we would say that like if there's anyone, right, that has the glorified body, it would be Mary.
Yeah, she's sinless, right? For you guys?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because everyone knows it's a sin to touch a man.
But
Wait,
she's
when did the
sinless in a
dormitory-
different way than Christ is, because she's like the depiction of what like synergism is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Whit, but when she came into agreement with like the angel saying that she was gonna have this baby, and she said like, Lord, let your will be done, or whatever, that's when she was filled with grace. So that's why it's different from like Catholics, because Catholics think that she was like sinless upon conception or something, like perfect. I don't know.
She was sinless her entire life from conception to ascension.
Yeah, but we believe that she was born with original sin.
Oh, but she never committed, like, let's just call it, like, active sin?
I don't know how you justify
She perfectly cooperated with God's graces, so she never committed personal sin, but she was born with original sin.
Mm.
I would just say
So
that
she had generational sin.
Ancestral.
She had reparational
God
sin?
was willing to allow
Subject to death, right? It's not what happened on the cross isn't just some like penal substitution, right? Where we're just like,
Whoa.
oh, he's cleansing us of our sins, right? Like that is a part of it, right? But also Christ defeated death, right? So, she's subject to death. She's mortal. And in that sense, she needed a savior.
Guys, Getty's trying to talk. Can we please keep interrupting him?
Was her body like perfected so that it would never die, or did her biology stay the same, and then she just like got a spirit that keeps her alive or something?
Well, I'd have to look at the whole story of the Dormition just to be accurate, because at least what I remember of the Dormition is that Christ himself took Mary into heaven bodily. So I would have to like make sure that I'm correct about that, but that's at least a tacit understanding that I have of it.